Luca Meldolesi, Albert Hirschman's colleague and friend, and also the caretaker of all his documents and archives. He founded the Colorni Hirschman Institute in Rome, an institute that, like ours, is a tribute to Hirschman's intellectual legacy. Today, he is the guest of Christine Lutranger, our center's executive director, for this podcast's first episode. Welcome to this episode of Research at the Albert Hirschman Centre on Democracy, a podcast by researchers for researchers, where we explore Hirschman's legacy by engaging in their fieldwork, methodological and theoretical inquiries.
Luca Meldolesi, thank you very much for joining us for this conversation today. You are connecting from the Colorni Hirschman Institute that you have founded in Rome. You have personally been inspired by Albert Hirschman's and Eugenio Colorni's work, thoughts, and life experiences. Their intellectual and life journeys, to use Hirschman's term, that ranged from fighting oppression to building peace and development following the Second World War. They have profoundly shaped the worldview and engagement of many scholars and practitioners for several generations. It is fascinating to see how Hirschman's and Colorni's ideas are put in practice today. In Italy's Mezzogiorno, the possibilisti who have gathered around you have launched bold and innovative projects as entrepreneurs, civil servants, and activists. We will come back to it in this conversation. My first question is a personal one. You have been very close to Albert Hirschman for more than 20 years, interacting with him in Europe and in the Americas. Albert left you with his manuscripts, documents, and also the motivation to continue trespassing boundaries. Can you tell us how you got to know Albert Hirschman and how he changed your worldviews?
Many thanks, first of all, for this invitation and also for the questions. Inevitably, this is a long story between Albert Hirschman and myself, so it would require days, not 50 minutes. I think the best thing I can do is to put myself in the position of explaining you some stratagems, because, Hirschman was a very ingenious guy who was inventing stratagems and ideas. So many of them are well known, but many others are not. Or not used normally. So I'm not talking about Exeter Boys or Passionate Knitters, etc. thing, but I'm trying to answer your questions with its own words. So, first of all, how it happened? This is the first question. And, well, Hirschman would answer, it has been a spontaneous constellation of circumstances, specific and general terms. Specifics, I would say that, he was worried about the turn in which the culture in the United States was going and also the political setting of the United States at the time. That is, I'm talking about the Reagan time, the first. And I was worried how things were developing, so I thought it was the time for him to speak up a little more. Since he was very quiet guy and has developed this important authority in cultural authority for a long time, but he didn't explain it properly. It was even for him it's a sort of a joke to give ideas without much explanation. Once he told me, for instance, somebody asked me, how do you get these ideas? So I was asking me, what should I answer? I couldn't, of course, answer to this, but it's obvious that if you were not really serious in working on his work, then you couldn't get any answer. But then there is even a general point of view that in the North American culture, something new is very considered. While Hirschman was talking about good and new, something should be good and new. And in the Italian culture, should be good first, and then maybe it's okay if it's new. But of course, we are a country in which ancient culture is also important. So for me, the important thing was to be on the good track. And actually, my problem was how he got this way of thinking. So, to reconstruct all the various phases of his life and also connecting it to a European culture.
My second question is about your book entitled Discovering the Possible: The Surprising World of Albert O. Hirschman. You recount over half a century of Hirschman's work, exploring the motivations, methodology, and unexpected developments of his research. It was published simultaneously in Italian, Spanish, and English in 1995, and it was the first book to probe the whole corpus of Hirschman's work. Can you tell us maybe about one or more of his key concepts that were most surprising or intriguing to you?
For me, there are some of them that are particularly important. One is complication. Complication. It means that you got some results in a certain discipline or mixing of disciplines, and then you shift them to another condition. Say, for instance, from economics to politics or something. But there is also a spontaneous reversal of this, that you are studying economics and then some ideas come to you from politics, from social science, and so on, and mixing, complicating this sort of a basic of economics is important. So the book that I edited in Italian a long time ago, but in English it's now is out. It's called How Economics Should Be Complicated. So this complication is so important because it brought me out of the typical economist road that is, you are either on one side or on the other side. Either you are on a neoclassical or classical, Keynesian, Marxist, and so on. This is not the Hirschman. Hirschman is how to consider that the economics has all this potential, but be careful to complicate because reality is much more important than what the people think about reality. Another key stratagem is yes, of course, you should concentrate on a little part of reality, but should be able also to think to the rest. That is, for instance, if you are in a developed countries, you should never forget the non-developed part of the world and vice versa. So, for instance, I'm now editing another book that I've been publishing in Italian with him that is called The Three Continents. This is sort of, and the title is Stati Uniti America Latina. That is economics, development of democracy in Europe, United States, and Latin America. So this is actually is very important. If you are interested in Italy, then you never forget. You should forget Mezzogiorno. If you are in Germany, you should never forget East Germany. Or if you are in Europe, you should never forget Latin America, and so on. And you never forget Eastern Europe. If you are thinking about Europe, normally you think to the four biggest countries, but you should never forget the smaller ones or the eastern part that is so important for us. So this is typical of him that Hirschman was telling you that Colorni was always present, was next to you, so sitting next to you. So if you enter into your way of thinking, now you have Colorni and Hirschman sitting next to you. And so before, when you develop ideas, you may ask them, whether they are good or not, or how we should develop them, what you think. So this is important. And it's also important for the ideas that you are developing should be encouraged. If an idea is not encouraged, it's wrong, he told me once. So this has become important for our work because, the lamentation, this attitude of passivity, the attitude of discouragement and so on is really negative and not helping anybody. Another one, this a key idea, conservation and mutation of social energy. This is something I actually have developed, so I will come back to it.
To get back to possibilism in practice in Italy's Mezzogiorno, can you give us an example of how possibilism influenced and motivated some concrete action around you?
First of all, possibilism is not what in politics normally this is possible, is not possible. It's a bit the reversal of that. You should look for openings that somehow hidden and come out only if you are very careful in your observation, and then we'll try from there to see where you should arrive at, passing through this point. Therefore, it's not the probable. The probable is it's in penal law, for instance. It's very important. This killing is a probable thing. Killing. Well, this is not a possibility. A positive is a mindset. It's a way of looking at things. And if you really enter into that, then it becomes a sort of a frame of mind in which you are normally working. For instance, normally if you are doing something, then something happens that you have to stop. People get discouraged and so on. Impossible, no, is you stop and then you start again. So for this reason, conservation and mediation of social energy. I mean, I'm a guy of the 60s, so the social energy was around, but my idea with Albert was to conserve and utilize. Conserve and utilize. For instance, if you now think to development in China, for instance, you don't understand how this development came out if you have not been able to understand what the Cultural Revolution was. Or, for instance, in Italy, the development after the Second World War came out of the Resistenza. So if you don't know the Resistenza, then it's impossible to understand the Italian development. But this is somehow could be spontaneous, could be studied in its peculiar thing. What is specific of our experience is that we have provoked that. We had the idea already because this is a 84 idea, and we used this for 10 years first and then another 10 years and so on. So provoking the process, what does it mean? It means that many energies are dispersed, disorganized, and you have to find ideas that push you in the right direction. And this is in my teaching in Naples and then also in other parts of the South, because I was in the government at a certain point for 12 years for this function, finding the right people and pushing them in. Well, what does it mean? It means that you have to know exactly their reality, enter into their life, enter into the life of their families, enter into the small economic activities that are around, the small agriculture, and so on and so forth, and then find the ways, with possibilities, ways for improvement and for opening up new ways. And this is really has been significant for us because we have been able to create a sort of a network. And this network tends to develop. And in fact, it's another idea of Albert. You should build small castles. Small castle, it comes from Renaissance, which you should try to be autonomous in your relationship with politics, with the local authorities, and so on and so forth. So this is our experience. We could discuss this at length.
My final question would be, how can Hirschman and Colorni inspire fresh approaches to democratic research and experiences today?
And the last question is perhaps the most important one, because I think, this is my idea, but it's so much inside this colonialism ways of thinking. Consider that I've been working also with Fernand Braudel, along Duré, all this stuff. My idea is that, in fact, the imperial domination in the human experience has been so long, from the Roman Empire, then Carolingian Empire, then the 8th centuries of then we have the tragedies of the war and so on. Then still we are in a reality in which there are bigger countries that dominate. Now there's a new imperialism coming up from the east. So this is a general problem. It's a general problem. What Hirschman and Coloni would think about. Hirschman, the first book of Hirschman is on national power. It's so much on that, so this is in the 40s. And Coloni was thinking that, the creation would open up a new story for all the world. So it's federalism that started in Europe, but then develop for everybody. And he has a specific idea on how to do it. So for me, the fall of the Berlin Wall has been a demonstration that he was right. But this I will explain better another time.
Thank you for listening to research at the Albert Hirschman Centre on Democracy. For more on how our center pays tribute to Hirschman's key ideas, please visit our website at graduateinstitute.ch/democracy, which is in the show notes below, and tune in to future episodes where we will explore the wide-ranging work of our researchers.